Have you ever wondered what life is truly like for a man who chooses solitude, not because he has to, but because he wants to? Most people assume he must be lonely, that he's missing out, that he must secretly wish he had someone by his side. But what if I told you that some of the most powerful, most successful, and most unshakable men in history chose to walk alone? Welcome to Stoic Spirit, where we explore the wisdom of the ancient Stoics and apply it to modern life, helping you cultivate strength, self-mastery, and resilience. If you're the kind of man who values independence, discipline, and purpose over distractions, then you're in the right place. Let me tell you a story. There was once a man who lived in a world filled with distractions. His friends told him that life was about parties, relationships, and constantly being surrounded by people. But deep down, he felt something was missing. So one day, he made a choice. He stepped away from the noise. He embraced solitude, and in that solitude, he found himself. This isn't just a story. This is the reality of some of the greatest minds who ever lived. From Marcus Aurelius ruling Rome in disciplined solitude, to Nikola Tesla dedicating his life to innovation, to modern entrepreneurs and leaders who intentionally choose focus over distractions. The man who learns to thrive alone is the man who is truly free. And today, I'm going to share 6 powerful truths about why solitude is not a curse, but a hidden superpower. Let's get started. Truth number 1. He masters the art of self-sufficiency. Most people can't survive on their own. They rely on relationships for emotional support. They depend on someone else to take care of them, to validate them, to make them feel complete. They've never had to be fully responsible for themselves because they've always had someone to lean on. But a man who lives alone doesn't have that luxury. At first, it's uncomfortable. The silence can feel overwhelming. The responsibility can feel heavy. There's no one to remind him to pay the bills, no one to cook for him, no one to console him when life gets hard. The world doesn't hand him comfort. It forces him to figure it out or fall apart. But then, it turns into power. He learns to cook, clean, manage his finances, fix what's broken. He doesn't wait for someone else to save him, because he has learned to save himself. He understands that if something needs to be done, it's up to him. There is no fallback plan. There is no safety net. And that reality, it forces him to grow. Most people never experience true self-sufficiency. They float through life outsourcing their problems. They let someone else handle the tough decisions. They look to others for approval, for direction, for purpose. They think independence is simply paying your own bills. But true independence is so much more than that. It's knowing that you can take care of yourself in every way possible. It's knowing that no matter what happens, no matter what life throws at you, you are equipped to handle it. It's standing in the middle of the storm and saying, I don't need to be saved. I've got this. Seneca once said, "He who is content with the least is the richest." For contentment lies not in luxury, but in self-sufficiency. And that's the difference between the man who walks alone and the man who always needs a crutch. The man who is self-sufficient doesn't panic when things go wrong. He doesn't fall apart when life throws challenges his way. He knows he has built himself into a man who can handle whatever comes next. A man who doesn't need external validation to feel whole, who isn't waiting for someone else to complete him, is a man who can stand unshaken in any storm. And the world respects men like that, because deep down, everyone admires the man who doesn't need saving. Truth number 2, he transforms solitude into strength. Most people can't sit in silence. They scroll through their phones, constantly seeking distraction. They fill their time with pointless conversations, binge-watch TV shows, and chase fleeting relationships. Anything to avoid being alone with their own thoughts. But why? Because deep down, they're afraid of what they might find. The silence forces them to confront their insecurities, their doubts, their fears. It forces them to face themselves. And for most people, that's terrifying. But a man who embraces solitude, he sees it as a gift. Solitude isn't emptiness. It's a forge for greatness. It's where a man strips away all distractions and discovers who he really is. He doesn't fear being alone because he knows that solitude isn't loneliness, it's power. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Nowhere can a man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." This isn't just philosophy, it's a principle that has been proven time and time again by history's greatest men. Take Bruce Lee, for example. He spent countless hours alone, training, meditating, refining his craft. While others were wasting time in trivial pursuits, he was sharpening his skills, deepening his discipline, and cultivating his mind. He understood that true mastery requires solitude. Or look at Nikola Tesla, one of the greatest inventors the world has ever known. He chose a life of solitude, not because he was forced to, but because he valued his time and focus too much to waste it. He knew that his mind, unburdened by distractions, was capable of creating the future. This is what separates the average man from the exceptional one. The average man runs from solitude. He sees it as a prison, but the man who embraces it, he sees it as his greatest weapon. Because when you're alone, truly alone, you begin to see things clearly. You gain insight into yourself that most people never will. You develop an inner resilience that no amount of external validation can give you. The man who learns to be alone finds power that few will ever understand. Let me tell you a story about one of the greatest men in history, Theodore Roosevelt. Most people remember Roosevelt as a fearless leader, a war hero, and one of the most influential US presidents. But what many don't know is that his transformation into the strong, unshakable man we admire today began in solitude. As a child, Roosevelt was weak and sickly, suffering from severe asthma. He struggled to breathe, and doctors believed he wouldn't live a long life. But instead of accepting his fate, he made a choice to make himself stronger. He isolated himself in the wilderness of North Dakota, where he lived alone for months as a rancher. He faced brutal winters, fought off wild animals, and learned how to survive with nothing but his own strength and resilience. There were no distractions, no comforts, only solitude and hardship. And that solitude, it made him into the man who would later lead a nation. By the time he returned to the public eye, Roosevelt was a different man. A man of incredible discipline, mental fortitude, and unbreakable willpower. His time alone had forged him into a warrior, a leader, and a man of action. This is the power of solitude. Most men avoid being alone because they fear it will make them weak. But the truth? The greatest men in history have used solitude to become their strongest selves. So the next time you find yourself alone, don't see it as a punishment. See it as an opportunity, because solitude isn't your enemy, it's your forge. Truth number 3, he develops emotional control and inner peace. A man who needs constant validation will always be controlled by his emotions. He reacts impulsively, he gets angry at small inconveniences, he crumbles under pressure. But a man who thrives in solitude, he learns to master them. Most people run from their emotions. When they feel anxious, they distract themselves. When they feel lonely, they chase relationships. When they feel insecure, they seek validation. But what happens when there's no one to run to? No distractions, no comfort. That's when a man is truly tested. At first, it's uncomfortable. When life gets tough, there's no one there to tell him it's going to be okay. When he feels restless, there's no one to take his mind off things. But instead of looking outward for relief, he looks inward. He sits with his emotions no matter how painful. He studies them, understands them, and ultimately controls them. This is what the Stoics called true power. Marcus Aurelius said it best. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. And that's the key. You can't control what happens to you. You can't control how people treat you. You can't control whether life is fair, but you can control how you respond. A man who has spent time alone learns this lesson deeply. He doesn't let external circumstances dictate his inner peace. He doesn't explode in anger when things don't go his way. He doesn't drown in despair when life throws challenges at him. Instead, he remains calm, composed, unshaken. And when a man reaches that level of emotional control, nothing and no one can manipulate him. Think about it. How many men have destroyed themselves because they couldn't control their emotions? How many have lost everything over a single impulsive reaction? The man who masters his emotions masters his fate. And once you reach that level of control, you become truly untouchable. If you're finding value in this video and these ideas resonate with you, take a moment to hit the subscribe button. By subscribing, you're not just supporting this channel, you're helping us create more content that empowers men to live with strength, purpose, and independence. It only takes a second, and it makes a huge difference. Thank you for being part of Stoic Spirit. Now, let's move on. Truth number 4, he becomes truly free. Most people are not free. They like to think they are, but in reality they are trapped. Trapped in relationships that drain them, in careers they hate, in lifestyles they never truly chose. They wake up every morning with obligations weighing them down, bills to pay, expectations to meet, responsibilities they never asked for. They live their lives on someone else's terms. But a man who lives alone, he is free. He doesn't have to check in with anyone before making a decision. He doesn't have to explain himself, compromise his ambitions, or put his dreams on hold for the sake of someone else's happiness. He moves through life exactly as he chooses. Epictetus once said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." And that is the essence of true freedom. Most people think freedom is about having more. More money, more relationships, more opportunities, but real freedom is needing less. When you strip away the unnecessary, when you remove the need for constant validation, when you no longer crave approval, when you stop trying to fit into society's expectations, you become untouchable. Imagine waking up every morning knowing that no one controls you, that you don't have to be anywhere you don't want to be, that you don't have to do anything just to keep someone else happy. A man who lives alone understands this deeply. He doesn't have to buy expensive gifts to maintain a relationship. He doesn't have to tolerate a toxic partner because he's afraid of being alone. He doesn't have to work a job he hates just to support a lifestyle he never wanted in the first place. He spends his time, his money, and his energy exactly how he wants. And that is a power most will never experience. Truth number 5. He achieves unmatched focus and success. Most people never achieve their full potential. Not because they lack talent, not because they lack intelligence, but because they are constantly distracted. They wake up every morning reacting to texts, to social media, to emails, to the never-ending demands of other people. They spend their days caught up in small talk, mindless entertainment, and emotional drama. And then they wonder why they never get anywhere. But the men who leave a mark on history, they are the ones who learn to shut out the noise. Think about it. Steve Jobs, Leonardo da Vinci, Nikola Tesla. These men weren't out chasing validation. They weren't wasting time in pointless drama. They weren't trying to impress anyone. They were obsessed with their purpose. And when you live alone, you gain the ultimate weapon, focus. There is no one interrupting your work, no one pulling your attention away, no one telling you what you should or shouldn't do. Every hour of the day is yours to use exactly as you choose. Seneca once said, "To be everywhere is to be nowhere." And that's the mistake most people make. They try to do too much. They spread themselves thin. They say yes to everything, and in doing so, they accomplish nothing. But a man who learns to be alone, he becomes laser-focused. He uses his solitude to sharpen his skills, to master his craft, to work tirelessly toward his vision. He doesn't just dream, he executes. He doesn't just talk about his goals, he achieves them. Most people live their lives in constant distraction. But a man who learns to be alone, he achieves greatness. Truth number 6, he builds stronger and more meaningful relationships. Here's the irony of solitude. The man who doesn't need people ends up attracting the best people. Most people enter relationships out of fear. Fear of being alone, fear of missing out, fear of facing themselves. They settle for shallow connections, waste time in meaningless conversations, and surround themselves with people who add nothing of value to their lives. They mistake quantity for quality and wonder why they still feel empty. But a man who thrives in solitude, he is different. He doesn't need constant attention. He doesn't force connections just to avoid loneliness. He's comfortable in his own presence, and that makes him powerful. When a man can sit in silence and be at peace, it changes the way he interacts with others. He doesn't seek validation. He doesn't chase approval. And because of that, he commands respect. Seneca once wrote, "Associate with those who are likely to improve you." And that is exactly how a man who thrives in solitude approaches relationships. He doesn't waste his energy on people who drain him. He doesn't invest in relationships that don't challenge him, inspire him, or help him grow. Instead, he chooses quality over quantity. Think about it. When you don't fear being alone, you make better choices about who you let into your life. You're not desperate to fill a void. You're not willing to lower your standards just for companionship. That kind of confidence, it changes everything. People sense when a man doesn't need them. They sense when he is whole on his own. And that makes him respected, admired, and unforgettable. Women notice it. Friends respect it. Colleagues admire it. Because in a world where everyone is desperate for attention, the man who doesn't chase it stands apart. And here's the real secret. Because he isn't desperate for connection, the connections he does make are stronger, deeper, and more meaningful than most will ever experience. He doesn't waste time with people who don't align with his values. He doesn't tolerate toxicity. He doesn't engage in empty small talk. Instead, he surrounds himself with individuals who elevate him. Mentors, thinkers, visionaries, people who bring knowledge, wisdom, and strength into his life. He chooses friendships that push him to be better, relationships that add to his life rather than drain from it. And because of that, the bonds he forms are built on mutual respect, not neediness. That is the power of the man who thrives in solitude. He is never alone because he has built relationships that actually matter. So what have we learned? A man who lives alone is not weak. He is not lost. He is not incomplete. He is strong. He is self-sufficient. He is free. He doesn't need validation. He doesn't chase distractions. He doesn't fear solitude. He uses it to grow. And that is what makes him truly unstoppable. Because while the world tells men they need someone else to feel whole, the truth is this: the man who can stand alone is the man who can stand anywhere. He doesn't seek approval because he has already approved of himself. He doesn't beg for attention because he commands respect without saying a word. He doesn't fear being alone because in solitude he has found his greatest strength. Most men live their lives running from themselves. But the man who walks alone, he walks towards something greater. And that kind of man, he is rare. He is powerful. He is unbreakable. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever embraced solitude? Have you felt its power? Drop a comment below and let me know how solitude has shaped you. And if this message resonated with you, like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Because the world needs more men who don't fear walking alone. And if that's you, you're already ahead of the game. Thank you for watching, Stoic Spirit. Stay strong, stay independent, and I'll see you in the next video.